Welcome, everyone, to Smart Sex, Smart Love, where talking about sex goes beyond the taboo and talking about love goes beyond the honeymoon. My guest today is Tom Bruett, a therapist, trainer, consultant, and author who works extensively with the queer community. He's the founder of Queer Relationship Institute, which provides therapy for queer folks and training for therapists who work with queer relationships. His book, The Go-To Relationship Guide for Gay Men, From Honeymoon to Lasting Commitment, provides the tools to build a rich, deep gay relationship. Today, Tom is going to talk about his new book. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Joe. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. I've been watching you on TikTok and Instagram and watching your practice grow, and then this book coming out, so I'm so happy to talk to you about it all.
I'm really excited to be here.
All right, well, let's just get right into it. Why did you write this book?
I wrote this book because I was kind of tired of recommending books to clients that were incredibly heteronormative. There's a lot of really great books out there. You've written a book on gay relationships, but there's very few actual books out there on gay relationships. And I think we just get more out of a resource when it's written for us. There's case examples that have us, and so I really wanted to create a resource that people could look at and work on to improve their relationship.
That's great. And Tom, can you tell us a little bit about the book? It has a developmental model built into it. Is that right?
Yeah. So the developmental model, my mentors, Drs. Alan Bader and Peter Pearson, they founded this model of couples therapy that's basically three pillars. So there's attachment science, there's neurobiology, and then there's differentiation theory. And so the differentiation theory, I think, is what sets it apart from a lot of different models out there, because it's really about how can you connect with your own wants, feelings, wishes, desires, and then tolerate the anxiety that comes up in a relationship when your partner inevitably wants something different, right?
Right. And so, the whole differentiation, do you know who David Schnarch was?
Uh-huh.
So David Schnarch was, the big, he didn't create differentiation. I think he borrowed from Bowen's work, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, but he would be like, God love him, he's now deceased, but he was probably one of the most undifferentiated humans you would ever meet, even though his work was all about differentiation.
That's great.
I love differentiation because it's all about what makes you right doesn't make me wrong, what makes you good doesn't make me bad. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think if we, and I think this concept, it's really important in romantic relationships and friendships and all that kind of stuff. But I think even this, if we could bring this concept even further out into the world and to community at large, there's going to be differences, and differences are okay. Differences are how we learn about ourselves and our partners and the people who are important in our lives. And so often we get locked into this pattern of not differentiating and not really sharing what's important to us in our romantic relationships. And it just creates, either a lot of stale toxicity or a lot of angry fighting.
And I love what you're saying because it's pretty much most relationships. But what makes the book and your work different with queer relationships around those same issues?
So I talk a lot about the things that have impacted us as queer men, gay men in our, growing up and development. So the developmental differentiation theory, that's a big component of this work in this book, really deals with some specific things that we encounter as gay men. And I've come to a couple of your trainings, so I know you speak a lot about this. And, there are differences to being queer. I mean, just from the media representation to the internalized homophobia to the overt homophobia. And then we think about sex and how, just the experience of being queer really impacts how we show up with our pleasure and our bodies and our sex.
Right. It's the doubling of the genders, right? So two women are going to show up very different than two men. They're going to show up very different from men and women.
Yes. Yeah, and I think the gay experience is different. We're not just trying to create carbon copies of heterosexual relationships. There's different structures, different sexualities at play. There's different, family and community aspects too.
I spent all of my early years up until your age. Is it okay if I say your age?
Sure.
Okay, then you're 40, right? In my 40s, I had built a heteronormative relationship with my husband. And I realized, what the hell am I doing? I'm gay. I don't have to be heteronormative. I can do this any way I want. Would you agree that gay and lesbian and queer relationships have more freedoms than straight couples?
Yeah, it's not all doom and gloom. I think, certainly I was in a pretty, heteronormative type relationship earlier on in my life. And the relationship that I'm in now is so much better because I could be differentiated and we can, have different relationship structures and different ways of really communicating about our wants and needs and desires. And it's not when you're raised just male in this culture, it's very difficult to actually get in touch with all that internal stuff, and then to actually be vulnerable and take a risk and share it with somebody else can be really scary.
Yes, especially when taking risks and being vulnerable as LGBT people has been mostly met with trauma, abuse, and rejection. And now we're being asked to do it in relationship, right? So that can bring that all up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. As your experience, do you work with lesbian couples as well?
I do work with a couple lesbian couples. Yep.
Because I always find that I jokingly say this, but it's kind of true, that you need the jaws of life to separate them because there's so much oneness. Whereas with gay male couples, my experience is I have to feel like the woman in the relationship, where women say, hey, come back to the relationship, come back into the. Do you experience that, or do you have a different way that you see things?
Yeah, I think that does speak to the attachment piece. I mean, we know a lot more gay men fall on the avoidant side of things. And so, I think when you just separate the gender piece out in attachment, it's like, okay, if you have two pretty avoidant people in a relationship, a lot of the work is going to be, how do you actually take some steps towards each other and build some group projects or do some things together that feel connecting and bonding.
Yes, rather than competitive and, like you say, avoidant. That's well said, actually. You talk about your 7 developmental stages in the book, or you say 7 stages. I'm calling developmental. Tell us what they are.
Yeah, so the 7 stages, there's 5 that come from Ellen and Pete's original theory, which are the honeymoon stage, the discovering differences stage, the exploration stage, and then the reconnection stage, and then you're working towards a goal of mutual interdependence. I've added 2 additional stages there. So the second queer adolescence, I think, is really important developmental stage for a lot of LGBT people, because our developmental experience is different. We don't usually come through adolescence at the times our bodies are kind of going through physical adolescence, and that really does shift the way you're kind of learning about yourself and relationships and all that kind of stuff. And then the other stage I added was an agreement stage. I think this is important for all relationships, but especially if you're differentiating and you're going out and exploring and trying different things, you've got to come back and reestablish those agreements in a really clear way.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And how do you help the couples do that?
So it's really through the process of learning to differentiate. And I think of it, I always tell them it's like a muscle. So we're, going to be working on building this muscle of differentiation. And I'm going to be encouraging you to the first step is self-differentiation, getting in there and figuring out what is important to you. And then kind of building up the skills to take those risks and share those with your partner. And then to tolerate that tension. Like it can feel really tense if you've avoided differentiating and being yourself in a relationship, like kind of like you were describing with your husband. I'm sure it was a process, right? To change those unspoken or spoken agreements.
Yes. Yep. Even when I love you using the word agreements, I use them too with couples. And I even ask, if somebody tells me they're monogamous, I will ask them, have you negotiated your monogamy? Because most people don't understand that's an agreement too.
I have quoted you in the book. I do
really?
use that bit. Yes.
I have to read it. I'm so glad to know that. I'll look for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for all you've done for our community.
I've loved doing all of this, and I love watching people come up behind me and learning from them. And I love that you're working with Ellen Bader, because she was always like in the background of all the theorists and all the couples, but I always loved her work. I used to use her. She has this couples contract. I don't know if she still uses it. I borrowed it. And then she has this one line that I love. When you forbid your partner, you invite secrecy. Have you ever heard her say that?
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, she does so much work with betrayal and infidelity and all that kind of stuff, which it takes a lot of differentiation to work through those cases when there's been a lot of betrayal or any kind of trust eroding.
Totally. All right. So you talked about the gay adolescence, second adolescence. How does it impact relationship? Well, what is it, first of all? If you could be a little more explaining of it, and then how does it impact?
So the second queer adolescence, this is certainly not a phrase I've coined. I mean, it's kind of around there, out and about. But I think it's something that we're finally acknowledging as in the queer community, because so many of us, I'll just speak from my experience, people, I would say it's a lot different for people who are younger than me, but I'm still getting 20-year-olds in my office who are disowned. And, so it's like the stuff is still there. But if you're coming to know who you are and you're having to keep bits and pieces of that secret, and then you're, also trying to figure out how to be in relationship with somebody else, it's almost impossible, I think. And so, in typical adolescence, your brain is developing, you're experimenting, you're trying all sorts of fun and interesting things. So many times as queer people, we do this after we come out, or, if you come out in your 20s, maybe you do it in your 20s. If you come out later than that, maybe it happens then. And I always say, like, these stages are fluid. So just because you came through it a little bit doesn't mean you're not going to go back to it at times. But, people will sometimes call it like your slut phase, or, you're having a lot of different partners, or you're just trying and experimenting, exploring and figuring out who you are.
In the sex addiction community, what I used to hate when I was part of it is they would call it sex addiction. You're acting out in that hypersexual. And I used to say, what you're talking about, this is delayed adolescence. You don't understand. Have you ever heard somebody calling it a sex addiction?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the sex addiction, I think, just from the inception of that term has been really dangerous for the gay male community. But
terrible. Right. And I always like to tell clients, especially if they're 40s, 50s, 60s, I'm sure you have too, in their 70s, when they're in delayed adolescence, at least this time you have money and you don't have acne. So you get to enjoy it.
And I love that, because I think so often we have to look for the joy, the queer joy, the resilience, because if we only stay in the challenging parts, like I don't think we're doing anyone a service.
I love that, what you just said, queer joy. Wow. Do you say that a lot? I
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Say more about it.
I just think it's something that so often, we can read, like if I'm giving a presentation, right, or on the gay male population, all of the statistics are really, very difficult to absorb. If we look at just the mental health statistics, the substance use, all that kind of stuff. But there's also so much more about being a queer person that is full of joy and resilience. And, I think Dan Savage has the quote, like, during the height of the AIDS epidemic, we would bury our friends in the morning, and then we would go and party at night as a form of resistance. And I think we need to, especially right now, like, stay attached to that.
Especially right now. Absolutely. You say in your book, you talk about relationship role models for gay men. Will you share a few thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think you're a role model, right? I mean, we lost an entire generation of gay men. I mean, not an entire generation. There are people who have survived, but it's very few and far between. Yeah. And so to lose that, that breadth of like our elders, I think it makes it really challenging to then look above us and into what are relationship structures and relationships that work. And there's very few examples, I think, out there of, like, especially gay men who are, living a life, who are ahead of me in age and have figured this out. And I mean, you certainly are one of them. You've been doing this for a really long time and have helped our community in a huge way. Thank you. I've loved it. But I've had to have my own right side, like Brian McNaught. Do you know who that is? Mm-hmm. Yep, he's been like my elder, right? When and then when Mike and I first got together, we had a gay male couple that were together longer than us. Thank God, because they normalized. Like, do you talk about that as well? Oh yeah, I mean, especially I think it's shifting with gay marriage and stuff, but I think the statistics actually show that LGBTQ couples that are committed and stay together longer than our heterosexual counterparts. But I don't think we can't look into the future and say, like, okay, this is the kind of relationship I want for myself. I mean, there was nothing on TV or media, and I know we shouldn't always look to those places for relationship role models, but we need it somewhere, right? If you grow up in a straight household and a straight community, and where are you getting the inspiration for living a life that feels authentic to you? Right. My role model, or I guess what I saw normalized was Making Love. Do you know that movie? Mm-mm. Oh, it's such a good movie. It didn't do well at the box office. It probably came out at a bad time. It was like 1981 or something, and it was with Kate Jackson and Michael Antekian and Harry Hamlin. It was about a gay man in a marriage, heterosexual, and he comes out. And then he has this gay adolescence and all this stuff. It just was very inspiring to think that I could. And one was a doctor, one was, I don't remember, but they had like really nice professional jobs. And back then you didn't see gay people with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it certainly has shifted in a lot of ways, but, then there's some frightening things happening in the world today. So it's still, we make a little bit of progress and then we go back a little bit. In Ellen's community, are you one of the, is there a lot of LGBT doing the work you're doing? Are you one of the few? So, I mean, she's thankfully, she's been a champion kind of since her first book in the late 80s. She had a gay couple in one of her early books, which, and she loves working with gay and lesbian and queer couples. What she said is now that as it's become more accepting for therapists to be out, she's not getting as many gay and queer referrals because they're going to therapists who self-identify as gay or queer. And I would say there's a handful of people in her community. And then that's why I really created this other training program that's all queer therapists, because I wanted to, my early training was at a place called Queer Life Space in the Castro in San Francisco. And it was amazing because we were in a cohort of queer, training therapists. We were working in queer community mental health. And then every week we had trainers from around the community come in and teach us. And there was something so beautiful and safe about learning in a space that like you didn't have to defend parts of your identity and really, because I think it's hard to learn when you're having to have that shield up.
Yes. We'll talk about that training then. I know you offer these LGBT trainings for queer therapists. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've taken, a lot of the principles from the developmental model work pretty well just as they are with queer and gay relationships. But I wanted to kind of create forms that are all LGBTQ inclusive, all of like the role plays and things you give your clients, and do all the code switching for people so that they can just learn the model, just like figure it out. And it's been really beautiful. I mean, this year I had about 25 people from different parts of the world. We meet twice a month, and it's just been really, really a beautiful community.
I can't tell you how much I love this, because I have a jaded perspective on how a lot of the LGBT people feel like they're the authority and there isn't a shared authority. It's so undifferentiated. How did you create a community that wants to be together?
Well, I mean, something I say all the time is like the queer community is not a monolith. I can't possibly speak for all of the queer community. I can't even speak for like many of the gay men out there, right? There's as many queer and gay people as there are queer and gay people out there. Yeah. And so I just invite other people to share their, we're a community. A community means we learn from each other, we grow from each other. And I mean, there's some great therapists in there who know a lot more about neurodiversity than I do, or, other topics, and they'll share, it's just a really nice, caring place to be.
I know. I think it's great. I'm making this up because I don't know for sure, but it feels rare. It doesn't feel like if there is other ones, it's got to be in pockets. You don't hear a lot about this much. I feel like my strength is teaching straight people how to work with gay people. When I've tried to bring together our community like you did, I'm not good at it, but you are.
It's something, I think that early training at Queer Life Space really just helped me figure out how this could work. And, there's a lot of differences in the queer community. And so we can't pretend that those aren't going to be there. But, I think just acknowledging them, differentiating, bringing it into the space. And, there's no way that you can do, for me personally, like my journey of every time I learn something new in the therapeutic way, I grow exponentially as a human. Yep. And so, we're always evolving and growing. And that's, I think, one of the beautiful things about this work.
Right. And then what you do is the same thing I do. You teach it. You find a way to make it a way to teach it. I love that about you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, teaching is just, it really is something that just lights me up. And I like working with clients, but the teaching has been really fun.
Now, what about singles? People will watch this and go, oh, he's only going to be dealing with relationships. What about me? What do you say to that?
Something I really was writing this book thinking it would be for, gay couples who are thinking about couples therapy. Maybe they're having a little bit of trouble, whatever. But I've had a few people and a few friends and people in my community who are single, who are reading it, especially younger gay men. And they're like, wow, I wish I had, there's no place where you can really get these concepts. And nobody's teaching relationship skills, I think, just in general. And then you add on being a gay man on top of that. And, there's a lot of people who are feeling lost.
Yes. And I always say, even just being men, right? Just because people forget we're men, we were socialized as boys. We're socialized as Terrence Real talked, to not turn our backs on vulnerability, not have relational language. We don't know how to, we're taught to run from each other, not toward each other. So then relationship become very hard. I'm sure you see that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just the smallest little act of vulnerability can feel like the biggest risk in the world. And then you add on like telling your partner you want an open relationship, or something that's even like bigger than that, or I don't want kids, or whatever it could be. Like that, those things can really upset the apple cart.
How do you deal with talking to couples about open relationships? Do you just bring it up, or how does it work?
I mean, I definitely follow where they want to go, but I myself have been in an open relationship. I have been since the beginning of this relationship, and I will sometimes disclose that to people. But there's usually, if they're coming to couples therapy around it, there's usually someone who wants it more and someone who doesn't want it. Right. And so getting them to differentiate and really get clear on what they want about it, what they don't want about it, what their fears are. So often people just want to go to problem solving right away. And I mean, that's how we're trained as men, especially but if you don't differentiate first and slow down and really understand, then, you're solving the wrong problem many of the times.
Right. And so many straight therapists, or just therapists in general, feel like, well, if one wants monogamy and one doesn't, or one wants something sexually and one doesn't, then it means that you shouldn't do it because there's somebody that doesn't. But I love what you're saying, and I say the same thing. Differentiation is anything. One wants to move, one doesn't. One wants more children or no children, one doesn't. It's beyond just monogamy and sex. Why do we only teach differentiation in everything but monogamy and sex? And you're saying, let's do it to everything.
Yeah, I think it is like the hands down biggest skill I wish I had learned earlier in my life.
Why? Say more about that.
It's something that I'll just speak my experience personally, like growing up as a little gay boy who was bullied extensively and all this kind of stuff. I really learned to hide and people please. And so I could disappear into relationships. I could make other people feel really comfortable, but I wasn't being true and honest about what I needed or wanted or desired. And so taking those risks and experimenting that way in relationships, it's like, wow, I can actually stay in connection with somebody and also have some autonomy. And it's just like a really powerful, magical thing.
What would you say to people that, you kind of already answered it, but I think it's good for us to be direct about it, who would say, well, why would anybody need to go to a queer therapist or a queer trainer? Like we've made it, right? So we're integrated. Why do we need to go back to being insulated? What would you say?
Many of the reasons I hear and like a gay couple will come in and they'll say, oh, we're having sex issues. We loved our straight female therapist, but we just didn't feel comfortable talking about sex with her. And there was something maybe she was doing or something from their past that wasn't making that possible. And so there just feel like there are some topics where, just because we're gay or queer, doesn't mean we understand every aspect of the community, but there's something about just opening the door that makes people feel, I think, a little bit more understood, a little bit safer. It's the same reason I'll really only go see a gay doctor, because it's, I don't want to be, not that there's anything wrong with straight doctors, and I'm sure I could get the help and support I need, but I really want somebody who understands and doesn't pathologize or judge things about being gay.
Right. So not just being gay friendly, but being gay informed.
Yeah.
Right. What else would you want people to know about the work you're doing that we haven't addressed so far?
What else would I want people to know? I hope that people will take a little bit of time and read this book. And the goal here is just to get people talking about things. And so at the end of each chapter in the book, there's questions. So if you're reading it with your partner, you can journal the questions, you can talk about them. Like the book is structured as a way to actually be a joint project with a partner, or if you're reading it on your own, to kind of journal and get to know a little bit more about yourself. And I really think that strong relationships build strong communities. And I just think our community, we could just be so much greater if we just dealt with some of these issues that so many of us have.
I totally agree. What about intergenerational relationships? I've noticed in the last 5 years, increase of negativity toward, it never used to be that way. In my generation, it was just known and understood. And unlike in the straight community where there's always judgment about older people with younger people, adults. Where's your stance on intergenerational relationships?
I think whatever works for the person is what works for the person. But it's so interesting because this topic does seem to be a hot button topic. I think I created a TikTok or something about age gap relationships, and it's like everybody has comments on it. This is a topic that it seems like our community is really, really invested in for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I didn't understand it either. I did a TikTok too, 2-3 summers ago, and I got lambasted, just horrible, right? And I was like, what is this? It was shocking. And somebody put in the comments, and then I got it. There's a whole body, a generation who grew up with online, with Grindr, with I don't know, whatever the old platforms
Manhunt.
were. Yeah, Manhunt, and right, I forget the names now, but they were preyed upon by older men through these platforms. They never dealt with it. They never got help for it. So they superimpose that this is a power imbalance, and they make it like what happened to them is in this relationship, and that's not what this is. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think if we think about like the topic of erotic orientation, right? Some people or templates, people just are attracted to what they're attracted to. And some people are attracted to younger guys. Some people are attracted to older guys, different sizes, and that I think has to be okay. Some people are sides, some people like to top, some people are verse. Like these are just parts of what makes up your sexuality. And if we could just stop pathologizing all of it, I mean, as long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as it's consensual, it's legal, whatever that means, like I think we've got to just have a little bit more space and graciousness around.
Right. Plus, I always say, I actually followed up to my video with this, and they blasted me for this, but it's true that when you have a delayed adolescence, you might be in gay years, you might be chronologically 50, but in gay years, you're 25, and you meet a 25-year-old, and you're in the same place emotionally and psychologically, right? So that plays into it.
Especially like if we think about it's like a really common therapist trope, right? Like if you had a really difficult traumatic experience, you stop developing around whatever age that was that you had that traumatic experience. So if your traumatic experience was something to do with your sexual orientation or coming out or whatever it was, it makes sense that you would be frozen a little bit around whatever was happening at that time.
Yeah. How do you help somebody unfreeze around that when they come in and they have that delayed adolescence? What do you do with them?
It takes so much trust. I mean, because people come in, they trust us as therapists, but they would be not wise to just automatically trust us, right? So it takes time, and it takes. They're experimenting with differentiation with me, and I think one of the powers of, if we're thinking about individual therapy, is like it gets to be a reparative attachment relationship, and when we can have that experience with a therapist and connect and like actually heal through some of this stuff and go through the process of differentiation and allow yourself to be fully seen and taken in and cared for. I mean, personally, that was what was the most healing about my own therapeutic journey. And it's something that I think that's part of what I think how change happens in therapy.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Can you tell people when your next round of trainings are for LGBT therapists?
Yeah. So the next one will start in September. And it runs for 9 months. I'm probably going to open I keep it really small, so I don't do more than 30 people. And then probably in the next, by June 15th, I should have it open for people who want to sign up.
That's great. And where can they find you?
They can find me at queerrelationshipinstitute.com. And on there's the list of all the trainings, and you can see the book and podcast stuff and everything me.
Good. All right, good. And then you're on YouTube, TikTok, right? Instagram.
Yeah, not as prolific as you, but you have found a way to balance it all. To me, it can be kind of exhausting.
I know. I have loved the marketing part of this from the day I became a therapist. So I think that's what it is. I'm a marketing passion, and I have a passion for the work. But I know the marketing can be exhausting to people.
Yeah.
I know, but I love it.
Yeah. And you're so good at it. I mean, you don't shy away from controversial topics. You really put yourself out there. And I mean, that is practicing differentiation and being vulnerable.
Thank you. I had a coach once say to me, you're controversial. I'm like, no, I'm not. She goes, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like we had a whole thing. And at the end, I was like, oh, I guess I am. And I am. But thank you so much for acknowledging that. Anything else before we stop?
No, it's been great to talk with you, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom, for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to watching more of your work and your videos and getting people referred to your training. So thank you. You can hear more of my podcasts on smartsexsmartlove.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And then if you want to go to my website, it's joekort, JOEKORT.com. And all of my handles everywhere is at Dr. Joe Kort. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.